Isaac Newton, as you may know, was an English mathematician from the peak of the scientific revolution. He created many of the equations and number systems we use today. But how exactly was it integrated into the curriculum? How did it gain traction? Did it gain traction at all in his lifetime? To understand this, we'll have to start with his early life.
Isaac Newton was born on January 4th, 1643, in Woolsthorpe Manor, which was in the United Kingdom. From the age of 12 to 16, he attended the King's School in Grantham, in the lodging of an apothecary. There, he began to show interest in chemistry.
At the age of 19, he attended Trinity College at Cambridge University, a prestigious college in England, where he studied mechanical philosophy and theology. He sought a fellowship at Cambridge to study mathematics and got a 4-year scholarship there. A year later, he got his bachelor's degree in mathematics.
Unfortunately, the bubonic plague, a deadly disease, manifested itself in England around that time, and he was forced to return home in Woolsthorpe. During that time, he worked on many of his theories we know today. These include the groundworks for differential and integral calculus, his theories of gravity, and his theory of light.
He returned to Cambridge after everything had blown over and collaborated with his friend Isaac Barrow to publish some expansions of Newton's on a book written by mathematician Nicholas Mercator. Barrow resigned his Lucasian professorship so Newton could have the spot.
He then invented, designed, and constructed the groundbreaking reflecting telescope, providing the clearest image possible with just mirrors. He had a legacy ready to be cemented, but how exactly was it cemented?
Newton's legacy, on its way to be accepted by all, hit a few roadblocks and made a few allies. The thing that stood in its way was the church, specifically the Anglican Church. The people, including his rivals and his friends, and on his side, the college, namely Cambridge.
In 1667, Newton became a Fellow of Cambridge, requiring him to vow celibacy and recognize the 39 Articles of the Church of England. He did not agree with these articles. He was able to bypass this, however, with approval from the king himself.
On the note of religion, Isaac Newton had some views on religion that made the church a nuisance for his expansion. He did not believe that the Anglican Church, which was the mandated English church back then, was true. He did not believe that any churches were true and believed that a general apostasy occurred early on in the church's development.
One example of his views making the Anglican Church angry is when he used mathematics to disprove a prophecy, as we can see from Church, Heresy, and Pure Religion by Rob Life. These apocalyptic images that would decide their fate, which caused the anti-Catholics to enter a state of paranoia. This, though, was fully disproved and told to be utterly preposterous, which made the church angry as they wanted a different answer.
Despite all this, he was a firm believer in God, a rare quality for a scientist. He believed that the true fullness of the church would be restored eventually, but no later than 2060.
The people were another issue he ran into his lifetime. Some weren't an issue, like Isaac Barrow, but some had a problem with his work, like rival scientist Robert Hooke.
Isaac Newton published De Motu, which was an early draft of the Principia Mathematica, Newton's most famous book, and in it contained an inverse square law, which almost exactly matched the one that Robert Hooke, a different scientist, had come up with before Newton, but Newton had not credited Hooke whatsoever.
Edmund Halley, an English astronomer, then wrote to Newton telling him that Hooke felt like he should have some credit or acknowledgement to his theory. Newton, however, did not like this one bit and fiercely wrote back saying that, in essence, Hooke was a brain-dead freeloader who wanted to leech off Newton's theories, and that there was absolutely no way that Hooke could have come up with that himself. Newton even destroyed possibly the only portrait of Hooke after Hooke's death, desecrating his influence even posthumously. Newton was cold-blooded.
However, an unpublished manuscript of Hooke's was found by historian Stanislaw Pulazi, which contained a drawing dated 10 months after Demo 2, but 2 years before Principia Mathematica, which showed science of the field that was more advanced than Newton ever did. Hooke might have been the original creator, but if he wasn't, he might have carried the concept further than Newton, although that theory was challenged by historian Michael Nauenberg.
Another man who stood in his way, might also have been one who fit better alongside him, as we could see in these statues. This was Gottfried Leibniz, a German mathematician who is credited alongside Newton, who invented calculus.
That wasn't always the consensus, though, because their pride sparked a decades-long feud called the Prioritätsstreit, or in English, priority dispute. Scientific priority was a trend in the 17th century where scientists would greedily hide their findings from others for fear of others copying them and passing them off as their own. Newton and Leibniz were no exception to this jealous behavior. Newton began working on a form of calculus called method of fluxions, an infinite series, which he did not publish until much later as a note in the back of his Principia, while Leibniz published a work called Nova Methodus pro Maximus et Minimus, which was quite different from Newton's.
It was just similar enough, though, for a French mathematician named L'Hopital to write about Leibniz's calculus, saying how similar it was to Newton's. A Swiss mathematician right off the bat accused Leibniz of plagiarism. After an anonymous review of Newton's science, however, everybody's eyes were turned toward Newton's in terms of plagiarism, though no accusations were made. Leibniz never publicly allocated the priority to Newton, and he died in 1716.
Cambridge, unlike Hooke or Leibniz, indeed did not hamper Newton's progress into fame, but rather helped him along the way. Aside from literally teaching him, they did such other things as giving him access to philosophy, sparking his interest in mechanical science, advancing his career to location professor, and organizing his work after his death.
When Newton first attended the college, they largely taught Aristotelian works. But Newton loved reading Descartes and Galileo, both which were also provided by the school's extensive library. Their library gave him the right inspiration to really get his work studying and eventually developing his own work.
As we said before, Isaac Barrow mentored Newton and helped to advance him to the rank of Lucasian professor, and he was then allowed to lecture other students at Cambridge about his theories, which got the campus lively with talking about him.
After his death, Cambridge has spent great effort cataloging his papers, including his early papers, study journals, the imported waste book, and his own copy of the first edition of the Principia. After his death, these papers were passed down to his niece Catherine and her husband John Conduit. Their daughter, also named Catherine, married John Wallop, and their son became the second Earl of the Portsmouth.
In 1872, the 5th Earl of this line gave all of the papers back to Cambridge, where they got right to work assessing and cataloging them. They're all now available on Cambridge's website, as they have since digitalized the majority of these papers.
So there you have it. These are the three main groups that interacted with Newton, helping them cement his legacy as one of the greatest scientific minds of all time.
The Anglican Church made sure he had to agree with their beliefs, even though with the help of the king he didn't have to. He had friends like Isaac Barrow and enemies like Robert Hooke along the way, and he had Cambridge to help him become revered throughout the ages. I'm James.
I'm DJ.
I'm Liam.
I'm Christopher.
Thanks for watching.